Fine, thank you so much. Well, good afternoon, everyone. How are you? All right? Lovely to be here. Lovely to be doing this. Lovely to be back in Tower Hamlets, the place I was born. I was born in Whitechapel. And look at me now, back again. Lovely to do this. To talk to you today about this book, The Secret Diary of a British Muslim. The picture on the front, that's not me. That is Tez Ilyas, the author. Who's read this book? One person, excellent. And everybody else, hopefully, will be able to entice you into reading this book. I had the privilege of supporting Tez on his tour. He said it was a comedy tour, but he was selling his book at the same time. And then somehow, he made it onto the Sunday Times bestseller list. I'm like, okay, you cheated the system. Well done, Tez, very good. So we're going to talk about this book. It's going to be lovely. Tez is going to come on. Usually what we did on the tour is I would come on and do 20 minutes of stand-up. And you guys would be like, oh my God, Eshaan Akbar is so much better than Tez Ilyas. I don't think we need him, but we can't do that. We're going to do a Q&A with you guys. So I think what we'll do is we'll get Tez onto the stage. So after 3, clap and cheer for Tez Ilyas. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there we go. Right. I realise there's no steps. Help. Okay. Thank you. Right. Okay, there we go.
Thank you very much. Oh my God, that was such an effort. Eshaan Akbar, everybody.
I feel like there's a design flaw with the stage. Anyway. Good.
How are you meant to get up here?
Yeah, where's
the stairs?
Don't look so smug now.
Oh yeah, there, look.
Oh yeah, they are.
Oh yeah.
I should have scoped out the stage. Okay, fine.
Okay.
That's on me.
We didn't get a stair briefing.
Yeah, we did get. That's true. Right, before we get into the book, there was a bone of contention in the green room downstairs.
Yeah, serious.
Which I'd like. You all look like trustworthy people, and I just want to get this straightened out. Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm just moving this.
All right. So there were 3 biscuits on offer, because that's how well we're doing. 3 biscuits. There was ginger nut, Maryland cookie, and digestive biscuit.
Chocolate.
Milk chocolate.
Milk chocolate digestive biscuit.
Milk chocolate digestive biscuit. Okay, so by way of cheer, who's going for the ginger nut first? Okay, the white people. Okay. Who's going for the chocolate digestives? And who's going for a Maryland cookie?
What? In your face! In your face! In your half Bengali Pakistani face!
I'm actually genuinely shocked.
He was, because I went for the chocolate digestive, and he was like, what are you doing? There's Maryland cookies. I'm like, no one would go for a Maryland cookie or a chocolate digestive. We had an argument about it. Turns out I was right.
Right, this book, which I haven't read. Let's interview you about this book. So, Secret Diary of a British Muslim, a memoir of a Blackburn boyhood. Who here has been to Blackburn? Oh, a few of you. A gentleman and lady over there. How long ago did you go to Blackburn? Do you remember? Yeah. You were born in Blackburn?
Yes! Come on.
Is that why you read the book?
It is partly, yeah.
And was there a sense of familiarity with the stuff that he was saying?
Yeah, so you were talking about playing football in St. Charles, that was my first present. So
Oh my God.
Oh, look
I
at
still live in the area. Oh my gosh, really nice.
So, do you live in London now?
yes.
And how long ago did you leave the hellhole that is Blackburn?
1991. And the year after that, we got promoted. So you were the reason why our football team started doing well.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Nice to have what do you call people from Blackburn?
Legends.
Okay.
Nice to have a fellow legend in the audience.
A legend over there. Okay, so a memoir of a Blackburn boyhood. Tell us first why you wanted to write the book.
Lockdown. Needed something to do.
Yeah.
Apart from aerobics exercises. I really think there's a gap in the market for people of our background for a memoir of growing up in this country. Because I read a few memoirs growing up of people from various backgrounds, but there wasn't one from my dad's generation of the people who came here in the 60s and 70s and 80s to inform us about what life was like for them in this country growing up. And so I wanted to give a snapshot of what life was like for my generation of kids who grew up in the 90s, the best decade of all time, by the way, unanimously. No? Yes, it was. And so I just wanted to give a snapshot of what it was like, and also so to document what it was like for my generation, to give the people older than us an understanding of what it was like for us, but also in this coming generation and the coming generations after, to give them an idea of what it was like in the 90s. Because the 90s were like 30 years ago, which is mad. That is actually mad. Like, I remember, like, in 1992, if you tried to tell me anything about the 60s, I'd be like, why? are you telling me about that for? That is literally, I have no interest in that whatsoever. So it's, for me it was quite important to like document something from my background for people who might be interested in it.
One thing that was really interesting about the book, and I think particularly for people, who here is from kind of East London? Give me a cheer. Yeah, quite a few of you. Now, I think one thing that I found a lot of kinship with was because Blackburn is kind of a working class place, you know, East London, particularly this part, used to be fairly well. They still got some working class. We went to a vegan cafe this afternoon and I fucking hated it. But this kinship I felt of people having cheeky, everyone's got a good sense of humour. So everyone in Blackburn you grew up with pretty much had a nickname. No one had their real names, did they?
Yeah, no, we all just grew up with nicknames and just, we have the most spectacular nicknames in Blackburn.
And what were some of your favourites?
There was this guy called, one of my best friends is called China.
And why was it called China?
He's called China. He's Pakistani, but he's got like the eyes of an Oriental person. And so literally we called him China.
Just for that?
Just for literally, we were kids and we called him China and we still call him China to this day. That's literally the only reason.
Do you know
there's no, I found out his name the day I knocked on for him once and his mum answered the door. And
Explain knocked on. They might not know what knocked on is.
Oh, I didn't. I knocked for him. So I knocked at the door to get him out. And his mum came out and I went, and I stopped myself because I thought that's probably quite rude. And I went, and I realised I didn't know his name. And then she went, Aftab, and I went, there's 3 brothers, and I went, yes? And then luckily, she must have guessed from my age who I wanted, and then Aftab came out, and I went, oh, you're called Aftab. Come on, China, let's go. So it's China. Shampoo Man, one of my favourite characters in Blackburn. So Shampoo Man was this sort of like a boogeyman character that lived in the area where my cousin grew up, Wally Range. And
was he like the local?
I don't think he was.
Okay.
But I think he alluded to the fact that he was some sort of shady character, maybe even a nonce. But I don't think he was at all.
Okay.
I think he was. What happened was he was one of the few remaining white people that lived in the area, and then automatically therefore became a shady character. But so, I think he was kind of like, you know, the caretaker. You know the caretaker in Home Alone, the one that saves him at the end. And throughout the whole film, you think he's this shady character, and at the end, he just turns out to be like a normal bloke. Yeah. I think Shampoo Man was a bit like that. Yeah. So I was playing with my cousin at once near Wally Range, and my cousin goes, "Oh my God, hide!" So I didn't know what was going on. So we hid behind a car, and I go, "What's going on?" He goes, "Oh, look at Shampoo Man," and I was like, "Oh my God, Shampoo Man!" And then when he walked past, I went, "Why is he called Shampoo Man?" And then he went, my cousin just stopped and he went, "'Cause he's bald." And that is spectacular wit for a 10-year-old. That is very witty for a 10-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing, have you found since writing the book, have people from Blackburn who are still there who grew up, have they got in touch with you and spoken to you about the book?
Yeah, so my family have all read it and they loved it, and I've had a few friends from school who've read it as well. And yeah, it was interesting because people you haven't spoken to for like 10, 15, even 20 years, getting in touch, going, "Oh, I remember when that happened," and stuff. And then they start telling you about their own stories. And because obviously everyone is the main character in their own head, in their own life and stuff. And so there's things you forget that people did because you weren't the one who did it. That wasn't important to you, but it was really important to them. And then even more memories came flooding back to me from that time and stuff. So it was really, really cool. So I've had very, very nicely, I've had nothing negative come back from anyone. So everyone who's read the book, especially from Blackburn, I've had really positive things to say about it.
And the reason I ask that is because there are certain sections in the book where, because, you know, not only are you charting the course of being a young British Muslim boy, you're growing up in Blackburn, but also you're trying to find your way in the world as a 13-year-old, like a teenager, and all the trials and tribulations of being a young man in that world. Were you ever worried, having grown up in a Muslim household and a Muslim community, that there would be some backlash about some of the stuff that you talked about?
Not massively. Like, everything that I do in stand-up, in writing, in acting or whatever, honestly, being from Blackburn is at the forefront of my mind all the time. And my thing is, I just want to be able to walk the streets of Blackburn without fear of being punched in the face. That is the number one thing that informs all of my art, is can I just walk the streets of my hometown without any aggro? So I always have that at the forefront of my mind. But there was, like, I was very, very honest in this book, even too honest maybe in some places. And But there wasn't any point that I was worried about anyone taking things wrongly, because I thought people have grown up with, they know these things, like they were there when it happened and stuff. So I don't think anyone could take any offense. I don't think people from Blackburn would take any offense from it anyway.
Yeah. What about from young Muslim men in particular? Like, you know, when you wrote this book, and given some of the things that have been happening recently in the United Kingdom around sentiments around refugees and things like that, did you ever anticipate that writing a book like this would constantly be relevant? And have you had messages from Muslims, particularly boys, just saying, you know, thank you, or I didn't know that you could talk about this?
Yeah. Because as I said, I'm very, very honest in the book. And our culture, probably more than a religion, being Asian, Pakistani, South Asian heritage, we don't always have honest conversations. We don't always express our feelings. We don't always talk about things of a sexual nature, for example. We're very closed about that. We don't want people to know about it. We're very repressed in that regard, even though we're clearly doing it. There's nearly 2 billion of us.
Yeah. We're always surprised.
Yeah. Oh my God, how did you have a baby? Yeah. So I felt like it was important to be honest about that stuff. And I did want to, like, not without wanting to be a role model or anything like that, but I wanted to show lads in particular of a certain age that you can express yourself and you can be honest about certain topics, and don't be afraid of talking about it either with your own boys or, you know, an adult or someone, you know. So
well, with that in mind, and you know, to be able to showcase the people who haven't read the book and to showcase your honesty, I think it's important that it's useful for you to read a particular passage that I think really captures everything that Tez tried to achieve with this book. The honesty, the openness about all things. And I call it the 213. I don't know if you know about the 213. It's a very short bit, and I think everybody here would love for you to read it, and they'll understand why this book is so powerful and useful for young Muslim men.
Okay, so the book is written in diary form. So this happened on Thursday, the 15th of July, 1999. I was 16. You just want me to read it?
Yeah, just read it.
Okay. All right. I've been waiting for this day for a long time, about 7 years. When I first ever read it in the Green Book, that's how I spoke when I was 15. So I wrote it in the way that I spoke at the time. When I first ever read it in the Green Book. The Green Book was a textbook I had in mosque, which went through some basic Islamic practices for kids and teenagers. All Muslims, men and women, must remove the hair from their underarms and from in and around their pubic area. It's time. I don't have enough hair on my face yet to justify shaving it, but I do now have hair in other areas, and so I need to remove it. I've bought a 10-pack of big disposable razors.
10.
I have one with me, and off to the bathroom I go. I think this got switched on. And off to the bathroom I go. Right, so I went to the bathroom, and I've come out of the bathroom to write this in now. Update. Well, it looks very different. Bigger? I started off by wetting my armpits with hot water. Then I took the lid off the razor and just went for it. Right armpit first. In Islam, you always start things on the right-hand side. I was surprised how easily the hair came off. I don't know what I was expecting, to be honest. I was too embarrassed to talk to anyone about it beforehand. I heard Was, my cousin, talking about it with Shibs, another cousin, a few weeks ago, but I was too shy to ask for advice myself. After a few strokes of the razor, all the hair was gone. I felt the area with my hand. It was so smooth. I then did the same with the left side. Then, for the pubic area, I got in the bath. We have a big corner bath with a seat now, and that really helped. I sat on the seat and poured water all over my bits and thigh area and started shaving. Upwards, downwards, left to right, right to left, pouring water over the area to get rid of all the hair, and repeat. Then the top of my right thigh, then the top of my left thigh. Then I bent over and shaved the inside of my ass. I'm just laughing as I write this. What a crazy sentence. Then last, I did my balls and my actual dick. That was tricky. I poured cold water on my balls so they became like hard domes instead of floppy, and that way I could see and shave the hairs properly. It must have taken me about 45 minutes altogether, but by the end, my pubic area, top of my thighs, and all my bits and butts were as smooth as my favorite type of peanut butter. So much hair though. Because I was concentrating so much, I didn't even realize that the water in the bath was rising because my pubes and ass hair had blocked up the plug hole. I took all the hairs out of the hole and threw them in the bin, and the normal service resumed and the water drained away. I washed myself and then finished up and making sure that the bath was as clean as when I first got in. I don't want anyone to know what I was doing, even though Ummi, Abu and Baj must do the same thing too. Anyway, I'm back in my room admiring my work. I did a good job. Well done, Tez. You're a man now. A man with less hair than when you were just a boy. Imagine some people just walked in at that moment where I'm like, and then I shaved the inside of my ass. What? I think this is the...
There's also frantic conversations happening with the organisers going, we should tell them there was like, it's 2:30, it's way too early. There, they've read it. So, as you wrote the book, you know, did you, beyond it being a lockdown project, beyond it being something that you wanted to share with the world, was there kind of any other kind of personal incentive for you to want to write this?
It was very therapeutic. Like, I think everyone should just write a biography about growing up and stuff, because the things that you remember and the things, for better and for worse, traumatic experiences, great experiences, a lot of it you suppress. Even good memories you forget about until you actually try and interrogate what you went through as a kid at that time. So I found it very, very therapeutic. And also, I just wanted to inspire people of all generations to, like, you know, find out what it was like growing up at that time.
The other thing I found really fun and interesting in the book is you talked about your slightly complicated family relationships. And I was particularly inspired by the story about your dad. He played amateur football to a very, very high level. And those aren't the kind of stories you often hear about parents of our generation who were wonderful sports people or academics who then come to this country and then try and make this work. Have you spoken to people, not just your dad and your mum, but people of that generation, and have they thanked you or spoken to you about their time a bit more? Have they opened up a bit more since you wrote the book?
Yeah, especially people in Blackburn, like my dad's friends who read the book and stuff, and they were just like thanking me for documenting those facts about my dad that they saw at the time, and the teams that, and they're the people that he played with in those teams. And apparently my dad was a really good snooker player as well, and a darts player and stuff, and probably not something that my dad wanted to tell me that he played darts, because where do you play darts? Yeah.
But also, you have absolutely no sporting ability whatsoever.
Zero sporting. I have negative sporting ability. Yeah. No, I'm good at kabaddi. Yeah, great. People have been in touch with me, just saying like it's just fascinating to see that stuff. And especially people from all over the country who don't really know Blackburn and what it was like, and the amazing sense of humour we have up there. So it's been very interesting talking to people from like Bradford and Birmingham, and who grew up in similar but slightly different setups.
Muslims love a town with the letter B, don't they?
Yeah. Bradford, Blackburn, Birmingham,
Bolton.
Watch out, Brighton.
You're next.
We turned that big dome into a mosque, because it looks like one anyway. So it's ready made for us, that.
Yeah, it's like the sea, easy access.
Yeah, easy. Get the lads in.
What was the hardest bit of the book to write?
The hardest bit of writing a book is writing a book.
Right.
Like, if that makes any sense, it's actually physically sitting down. And I remember when the book was commissioned, and you know, we virtually on Zoom shook hands with the editor saying, "Oh, the book, you know, you've got a book. Go and write a book." I was like, "Oh my god, I'm going to write a book. That's amazing." And I was like, "Oh shit, I've got to write a book," because you can't write a book without actually physically sitting down and doing the work. And I remember like sort of roughly calculating, I think I want to write a book that's like 250, 300 pages, because that sounds like a proper book as opposed to a novella. And I was like, how many words is that? And it came to roughly about 80,000 to 100,000 words. And I thought to myself, that is too many words. Yeah, like, I struggled to write 10,000 words for one dissertation at university 15 years ago. Like, how am I going to write 8 times that, 9 times, 10 times that? But once you start writing, it just words flowed onto the page, and I think I ended up writing 150,000 in the end. And then it got edited into...
Well, I mean, you do talk a lot. What did you enjoy most about writing the book?
talking to my friends and family about and going over those memories and seeing what they'd remembered compared to what I remembered. Because there's always three sides to a story. There's your truth, then the person's truth, and then the actual truth. And so the things that you remember that other people remember differently, and then you're like, oh, maybe the story's actually somewhere in the middle. So that stuff was really good, like reminiscing with my cousins and stuff, because we were at school together. And so yeah, I love.
Do you have a favourite part of the book?
The Pakistan trips, I think, there's 2 trips that when I've been to Pakistan in these years. And those are my favourite parts of the book, I think, because I've also just come back from Pakistan as well. I came back from Pakistan on Sunday. And yeah, it was so it was like my wife at the back of the room, like she'd read the book, but she hadn't been to my grandma's village in Pakistan. So I was like, oh yeah, remember in the book when I got chased by the crow because I was messing about with this baby? That's this bit when I ran around the roof and the crow's pecking my head. That happened on this roof here. So that stuff was really cool.
And how much has Pakistan changed? You just said you just came back. How much has it changed from when you were reminiscing about it in that?
Massively, like it's a lot more modern in some respects. Like I remember when I first ever been to Pakistan, which would have been 1986, I think, or something. Like we didn't even have a toilet in the house. Like we'd have to go into the fields and do a proper old school. And now there's 2 bathrooms in the house. And
like a music festival.
Yeah.
They know.
Like India.
Yeah.
And today, like India today. So so in some respects it's changed a lot, and then in some respects it hasn't changed at all.
Okay.
We're still farmers. We still plant wheat and harvest that in the spring. We still got animals in the we still got buffaloes and cows and goats and stuff. So in some respects it hasn't changed, and in other respects it's changed a lot.
You mentioned that your wife is here. She's in the background, just at the back over there.
Yeah.
You said she read the book.
Yeah.
Did she regret her decision marrying you after she read the book?
Well, she read the book before we got married. The girl in the green, the other way. No, the other way. The other way. Yeah, that way. Yeah, that way.
Everyone point.
The girl in the green. The girl in the green's like, what? Where is she? Huh? Where is she?
She read it before.
No, she read it before we got married. So
okay.
You can ask her yourself.
Shy? No, you don't want to ask the question?
No, that was no regrets.
Oh, no regrets. Really? Okay.
Oh, they all turn around now and no.
Oh, but that must be quite interesting though for someone where you're about to start talking to someone, start dating them, and they've got a book about their teenage life. So you can find out everything about them.
And they're like, oh, he shaves his ass. That's good to know. Okay,
he looks after it.
That's good to know.
Bit of a cheat code. Was that part of their plan as well? Like maybe someone will read it?
No. But it is always a good icebreaker. Oh, I have a book, by the way.
Who here would write a memoir of their teenage years and then pass it to a potential suitor? No one's up for that at all. Fine, okay. We'll throw out some questions. I've got a few more questions for you, but see if anybody here has any questions they want to ask Tez at this juncture. No. Not a single question. Nobody. You're putting pressure on me to actually come on. Oh, yes, lady over there.
How did you just get started? I mean, you said, people said, oh, you've got to write a book.
Yeah.
And then you have to do it. Did you have notes already? Had you been keeping a diary? What got you going?
That's a very good question. I did not keep a diary, so this is based on memories from now and talking to people. So what I did was, I'm such a nerd, I created a spreadsheet with years down on this side and themes across the top. And then for each year, based on the theme, I just filled in as much as I could in the spreadsheet about things that I remembered, things that I then spoke to the people about and remembered more stuff. I then went on Wikipedia for each of those years and legitimate source, and just basically just a summary of everything that happened in the news and sport in those years. And then there's things that you remember, you're like, oh yeah, I remember the Kosovo thing, and I remember Chechnya and all that stuff, and you're like, and then you remember where you were at that time, because I remember the Soho bombings, because I was in GCSE, it was just before my GCSEs that, and I just come back from Pakistan, and I think I came back the weekend of the third Soho bombing, And so you're like, I remember that. Oh yeah, now I remember I was there, and that means I was doing this, this, and this, and so that means my friends were doing this, this, and this. So going through that and just going through the history of those years really, really helps like color some of the memories in. And then you're like, oh yeah, World Cup '98 when Ronaldo didn't play. Well, he played the final, but he shouldn't have played because he was injured. Oh yeah, and then yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, so that stuff, just going through the news and stuff, also really, really helped. And then just talking to my like family. Like my sister's got an amazing memory, much better than mine. And there's a story that documented in here that she remembers that I still to this day must have blocked out. It's about time we went to the library together. She's 6 years younger than me. So I would have been 14, she would have been 8, and it was her birthday, so we went to the library so she could get some books, because she loved reading. And on the way back, we got attacked by this gang of kids. And it's a memory that I completely blocked out, but she remembers it so clearly. So I had to ask her, like, what happened? Okay, they made me jump up and down for change, and then what happened? And then, they emptied my rucksack out, okay, and then what happened? And then, so that was pretty, and then she reminded me of the fact that I used to collect Kinder Eggs toys and not let her play with them. So that was something that I'd also forgotten, but apparently I had a collection of Kinder Egg toys along my mantelpiece in my bedroom, and like, I just like, you cannot play with them. So just things like that were just really, really sweet.
Also, jumping up and down for change, that's given me a bit of nostalgia. Because
Yeah.
you couldn't do that now. Is
No,
everything
yeah.
That'd be quite okay. Very good. And is anybody here trying to write a book at the moment? No. Don't want to admit it publicly. In case you heard too early.
I think the lady at the back had a question. Did you have a question?
It was just, you put a survey on Twitter about chocolate digestives.
Oh yeah, what's going on?
90% of your favourite chocolate digestives.
See, no, I disagree. And if there's one thing we've learned about democracy in the UK, it doesn't work, does it?
Yeah.
We'll do another referendum about that. Any other questions? Yes.
Did you have anyone in mind when you were writing? Did you try to like set anything straight? I don't know, talking to anyone in your mind, family members, future wife, I don't know.
Oh, there's definitely some. So I had quite an evil stepdad that features a little bit in this book, and then I spoke to my mum, and I was speaking to my mum. He's an ex-stepdad, so my mum threw him out a few years ago. So I softened it a little bit after speaking to my mum. But there was those like ugly parts of your life that you wanted like just get off your chest and address. So that when I said it was therapeutic, it was for those reasons. And then also it's kind of a love letter to the people in Blackburn and that like my granddad's generation who gave up everything. So my granddad fought for Britain in the Second World War. I think he was in Burma. And then he came to this country with nothing. Then eventually called my grandma and my dad and my aunts and uncles when they were kids. And from that, this entire generation has been spawned. And it's kind of like a love letter to that generation as well, who came here very bravely, I think. Not that Windrush generation. I think the Windrush came from the Caribbean. These guys came from Asia. And there's a love letter to those guys saying like, you know, look how far we've come from, you know, when my granddad came, it was 20 people sleeping in a house, 10 people sleeping in a room, and 10 people would sleep because the people doing the day shift, then the day shift would come home, they'd sleep, and the night shift would go and work, and they just lived like that for years until they ended up getting on the property ladder and stuff. So it's kind of a love letter to those guys saying, look how far we've come.
I think it's particularly pertinent now, particularly in the UK, that we've got a British Asian Prime Minister, whatever your views about him politically, but for our grandparents' generation to be able to fathom that might be a possibility. And for them to be able to fathom, like my dad, similar to you, came from Pakistan in the 60s, for him to be able to look at a British Asian Prime Minister and say, fuck him, he's Indian. That is amazing. That's an amazing bit of progress.
You know what was really interesting? When I was in Pakistan, they were dead worried about it.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, I know, Prime Minister, but not Indian, Murad. Yeah. And they're like, oh, and they were like, oh, he's gonna let loads of them come in now, and they're gonna stop Pakistanis going there. That's basically what they were worried about. It's like, oh, the floodgates will open for those guys.
Because the thing is again, so I know we're going slightly off piece with the book, but when you speak to like our parents and grandparents' generation, and then you hear the kind of things that Suella Braverman and Priti Patel say, sometimes you're like, man, my mum was one who was like, I don't like the other immigrants, we're the best ones, stop the other ones coming in. And you're like, that is wild.
Yeah.
So anyway, there we go. My mum, don't hate my mum. She's not Suella Braverman. Any other questions? Oh, yes, sir.
Are you presenting your book as total fact?
Yes. 99.9%. 99.9% of it is 100% factual.
I made an attempt to write an autobiography, and I got about halfway through, I suppose, it occurred to me I wasn't writing an autobiography, I was writing my life as I would have liked it to have been.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I've just finished rewriting it as a fictional story, and I wouldn't dare present it as an actual
What's your name, sir?
My name is Martin Graham, but I haven't published it yet. So it's
That's okay.
But it must be a tremendously difficult mental process, to actually say to yourself, every word I'm writing is the truth.
Yeah, it's. I mean, some of the dialogue is made up because who can remember what they actually said when they were 14 years old? But I try to be. This is my truth. So it's, like I said before, there's three truths on that: your truth, the other person's truth, and the actual truth. So this is, as far as I remember, is what happened, and I felt a tremendous amount of responsibility because, as I said, there's not a book like this in the market for people of my background to read, and it's not that well documented. Our history in this country is not that well documented, especially in print. And so I did feel a bit of responsibility to be as truthful as possible. And also for, like, boys especially don't maybe have tremendous amount of positive role models, and to show them that you can be vulnerable, you can go through traumatic experiences, you can go through tough times, or you can even celebrate the naughty times, you know, the times where you broke a shop window by accident, and you can look back at that and laugh at it.
Or on purpose. Or on purpose.
Yeah, or on purpose. And you know, you can laugh at it, 20 years later as an adult. So I try to be as truthful as possible, for better or for worse.
How you got on with the English white working class
In Blackburn. It was interesting. Yeah, my school was very mixed. So there are some schools in Blackburn that are very all white or all Asian. The school I went to was very mixed. I went to Witten Park, which was a very mixed school. And it was weird because we got on well in school, apart from the 2 race riots we had. But apart from that, apart in year 10 and 11, apart from that, we got on pretty well. There's a lot of banter that flowed back and forth, probably a lot of racial epithets that we just did because we were friends at school and stuff. But then outside of school, we never really mixed that much. So there was a bit of a sort of like, okay, I'm going back to the Asian area, you're going back to Mill Hill, the white area and stuff, and I'll see you back at school tomorrow. So there was a bit of that. I think it's getting a bit better, but there is still some work to do. The football club's been really, really good at pushing sort of diversity and integration and inclusion and stuff, and they've done some really, really good work.
And you've done a lot of work with the football club.
I've done some work with them as well. I'm the face of the kit launch this year, which is very nice. So there is still some work to do, but we were lucky we never had the tensions that like Burnley or Oldham or other places had. So we never had the sort of full-on riots that you saw in Oldham in the year 2000 or Burnley and stuff. So I think there were some tensions, but they never really boiled over. What was your experiences like growing up in?
Well, I suppose this was earlier. I remember at school, as you say, your kids you would play with everyone else, and you sometimes meet up after school weekends and stuff. But as you got older, you realised there were certain tensions, there were certain you would hear things, and then you think, why are people saying that? And so this is just what you would hear from like neighbours or whatever. And even if you thought, the grown-ups were being a bit ignorant, you thought, well, that's what they think, even if it didn't make any sense. But, so I was surprised that those tensions didn't. I left when I went to college at the time I was 18. But I was surprised that there wasn't more a trouble, if you like, because I thought a lot of people had a really bad time for a few years. It must have been very difficult, particularly in the early 70s, for Asian kids, because there was a lot of really nice people around. It was quite organised. I mean, you wouldn't have gone to the football, say, because there was organised.
Yeah.
So I was surprised that it didn't, you feel like, explode at some point.
Yeah, I think there was definitely skirmishes. I remember my dad was telling me a story about when my granddad used to work. They used to get paid. I think every Thursday or Friday they get paid, and then for a few weeks, sort of the local jobs, National Front, whatever they were, realised that all these Asian men working in the factories were getting paid every Friday, so they go and rob them. And then after a few weeks of this carried on, sort of the Asian guys got organised, And so they sort of set a trap for these yobs. And so one of them stood at the bus stop, one of the Asian men stood at the bus stop, and then when the guys came to rob them, they just got absolutely surrounded by all these Asian men, and they told them what for, and then it never happened again. So there were like stories like that, but we were lucky that it never boiled over into something bigger like we saw in Oldham and Burnley.
Do you have any questions from this? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to ask, what did your parents think when you wanted to become a comedian? Because people of that generation didn't really see that as a career or understand it as a career. So when you told them this is what I'm going to become, what did they actually think of it, or did they actually understand?
Yes and no is the answer to that. So my dad is the black sheep of his generation, or brown sheep of his generation. And so anything that is slightly non-traditional, a bit off kilter and stuff, my dad loves it. So when I was like, I'm being a stand-up comedian, my dad's like, sick, that's wicked, go do it. And my dad's always been very, very supportive when it comes to my shows and stuff. And my mum took a little bit longer, because I came to London where I started doing stand-up because I got a job at the Home Office. I got a job in the graduate program for the fast stream. They put me in the Home Office. I had a very, very, that was meant to be my career.
Tell them what you worked for.
Theresa May. Yeah. I'm a civil servant, right? You work for the government of the day. All right, shut up. And I worked in the Olympics, actually. So does everyone remember the Olympics? Yeah. Do you remember, you might not remember this, do you remember how no one got blown up during the Olympics? You're welcome. So my mum was a bit like, I just don't understand. Like, this is not the sort of, and I don't blame my mum for that. There was, whose footsteps was I following in, really? Yeah. So there was no sort of point of reference for her to be like, oh, you're going to be like so and so, and oh, great. And I think my granddad's generation didn't come here thinking that in 50 years' time their grandchildren are going to be on TV or singing, dancing, or whatever. That's not probably the dreams that they had. And so I don't blame my mum for having those sorts of reactions. I think they're completely natural. I think I'm disappointed now if people of our generation of kids would try and stop their kids from like realizing their dreams. I think that's quite disappointing. I think from people of a certain generation, I'm not like, those reactions are very, very understandable, the hesitance, sort of reluctance, because that's not what, they don't see themselves on TV, or growing up they never saw themselves on TV. So it's natural for them to think that that's not a place where we belong. But I think our generation are doing a lot of work to try and change that. So hopefully the next generation that are coming through will think it's those sorts of careers are completely normal.
Any more questions? Yes, sir.
I wouldn't dare write about my teenage years. There's too many dodgy people in the family. I wouldn't like to...
East End geezer, isn't it?
I'm saying, seriously, you must have read it. Can I write that?
Yeah.
Like that whole, when I'm cool, should I write that about when I did this in Woolworths or whatever?
Yeah.
How many things...
I was honest about my own experiences, but there were some things that I wrote initially and then we took out in the later drafts because we were like, some of these things aren't my stories to tell. Yeah. But there were some very, very interesting, sketchy things that happened in Blackburn over those years that weren't necessarily my place to say and tell, and also then to also protect people's identities and maybe their liberties. So there were some things that I sort of, it was interesting to document it all in initial draft, and then you're like, okay, let's. How much? Probably about 40% of stuff. Yeah.
But also tell them about the, I guess, quite touching conversation you had with your mum when you told her about you writing this book.
Yeah, I remember when I first, I was quite nervous when I got the book commission because I'm writing, because when you write about yourself, you also therefore by default have to write about the people around you. And they might not be okay with that. So I remember being really nervous when I was telling my mum about the book commission. And when I first told her I'm writing a book, obviously she was delighted. She was like, oh, that's amazing. And then she's like, what's it about? And then I'm like, oh, it's about my life growing up in between this age and that age. And she goes, oh, what years were that? And I was like, oh, between 97 and 2001. And my mum was in the kitchen, I think she was washing up, and she just stopped and she just turned around and she went, those weren't good times for us. And I remember thinking to myself, yeah, Mum, that's probably why it's important to write about it. And then when I did write it, I talked about the things, the more difficult things that I'd written about. And then we came to compromises on certain things, and there were certain things she wanted me to soften, certain things she was okay with me writing about, certain things she wanted me to take out and stuff. So there were some conversations that had to be had about, because it wasn't just my own, because it's not just my story, there's other people's stories involved as well.
Yes, sir. Go ahead. One more.
My mum luckily hasn't read the book, but my dad has, and my sisters have, and my cousins have, and they haven't brought it up, I think, which is oh, I read your book, what's your favourite part? The Pakistan stuff? Yeah.
You had a question.
Over the years, since you were growing up in Blackburn, what would you say are the main differences in sort of multicultural society and how everyone communicates with each other, the difference between how you were growing up in Blackburn and to present day, or is it still pretty much the same, would you say?
Good question.
A very good question. A lot has changed. I think a lot has changed, but I also think that we're sliding backwards a little bit. I think we came to a decent understanding around the late 90s, early 2000s about each other, and then certain globalist things happened, and the financial crash and all that sort of stuff, and those things are ripe to radicalize people one way or another. So I think we were heading in the right direction. There was greater understanding, greater tolerance for people from different parts of the world and stuff. And I think we are sliding slightly backwards.
But also that time you mentioned 1998 to 2000, well, 97 to 2001, they were halcyon days for British Asians.
Yeah.
Because you had Goodness Gracious Me, you had Nitin Sawhney, you had Prince Naseem Hamid, although not Asian, but we claimed him as ours, he was a brown guy, who was boxing. But brown representation was actually quite a nice place.
Yeah. Punjabi MC in the charts.
Yes, exactly. And then, 9/11 happened, and suddenly everything, it's taken a good 15 years, 16 years since for brown people, but particularly Muslim people, to be not seen as all the time. So, and that's why this book is relevant, I guess, now.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay,
Very
cool.
interesting. Thank you.
Cool.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is your relationship with being Muslim and Asian is a positive one now, because of the way you said it's like a love letter to the people of Blackburn. Has it always been like that through the years?
Yeah. Well, for being Muslim, it has. Although there was, although I learned a lot after leaving Blackburn about actually what it means to be Muslim, and the parts of my religion they don't really teach you in mosque, because where I grew up, they very much just taught you verbatim how to read the Quran in Arabic without really giving you a lot of understanding and stuff, and then you were told, do this, do that, and you're like, cool, okay, cool. And then when you grow up, you're like, okay, that's why I'm doing it. Okay, there's a lot more to my religion. There's a whole spiritual aspect that I didn't really get taught about. There's actually different ways of practicing my religion, which aren't right or wrong, they're just different. And things you learn outside of mosque, and you do it from reading and talking to people and stuff. And I remember the first time I saw someone praying slightly differently to me in the mosque, I was about to go and correct them and be like, that's not how you pray, mate. Yeah. It's not how you pray, mate. And then something in me just stopped and went off.
And you were like, I need to leave this temple.
Yeah. And then there's something in me stopped me though, and I was like, oh, maybe they're an adult, maybe they know what they're doing. And then a friend of mine explained to me, like, oh no, they come from a slightly different school of thought, and they do slightly things differently. It's not different. It just when the Prophet Muhammad was alive, he practiced things slightly differently in different eras of his life, and they practicing it from that era, and we do it from this era. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know any of this stuff. So I've always had quite a positive relationship, very positive, I'd say, relationship with my religion. My culture has gone up and down, because I feel like the slightly more traumatic, more negative experiences in my life have come through my culture rather than through my religion. So the relationship with that has been very up and down. I've always been very proud of being Pakistani heritage and stuff. But there are certain, within every single culture, there are things, whether you're Eastern, Western, or in between, there are certain parts of those cultures that you're like, oh God, I wish we didn't do that, or I wish they didn't do that, or whatever. And so parts of that used to bug me sometimes. But now I'm kind of over it. I kind of follow that. To bastardize a Marilyn Monroe quote, like, if you don't like us at our worst, you don't deserve us at our best.
That's one thing I particularly liked about the book was, and we've had loads of conversations about this as someone who's from a Muslim background myself, the fact that in the book, as you said, you're writing it from the perspective of a young teenager who's finding his way in the world, but also as a Muslim. And there you were very frank about the fact that there were certain things that you just didn't understand. And if you've grown up Muslim in this country in the time that we did, you don't often get leeway to do that. So for you to be able to do that in the book, I think is commendable. And so very brave of you as well. Conscious of the time, do you have to be out of here by 3:30? Right, so we've got 10 minutes. I'm a very good timekeeper. It's very good. We've got, 9 minutes now. We'll do a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up. We'll go to that lady first, over there. Yes?
So how you inspire a young person who's the only person actually wearing hoodie is indoor to have fun and write instead of holding behind with lots of emotion. It could be why mommy is kissing me in front of the school. And has true potential but embarrassed about everything. So any inspirational quotes?
Eshaan, this is your neck of the woods. I would say just it's important to let people also be themselves. Some people are naturally just very, very shy. Some people are more exuberant, like me and Eshaan. Some people are flamboyant. Some people are wallflowers, and they like to keep their own counsel, and they're quite shy and things. I would encourage that person, whoever they may be, to maybe keep a diary, to journal their experiences daily for themselves, not for anyone else to read, for their own experiences. Maybe do some creative writing for themselves. And if at the point they are ever ready to show it to anyone, whether it's a teacher, a friend, someone they're just talking to online, a pen pal, or a parent, or a cousin, or a friend, then maybe show that person. But just start doing something that you enjoy, whether it's poetry, journaling about your daily experiences, just writing journalism, writing stories that you've made up in your head, or writing about what's happening in the world. Just start writing, and if you enjoy it, keep doing it. And one day it may become your job. But there's no reason for you to show that to anyone. You can just keep it for yourself for now.
Yeah, thank you. And just wondering, the child, when they can't be true to themselves, from others, what people are thinking and all these things, how can they just step forward to not to feel that way that people are thinking? Because just like you, what it is with your book, it's fun.
Yeah.
Writing is actually about fun, not always fancy word and where you're from, what you're doing and all these things. So how can a young person overcome with those thoughts?
I think it is difficult, because I think young people live in a very, very challenging time with social media and seeing everyone else constantly put on a pedestal and everyone else's life looking so spectacular online. And if you look on Instagram and TikTok, everyone looks like they're having fun all the time. And I think the thing to remember is that is not true. Like no one's life is always bad. No one's life is always good. What you see on social media is very much a snapshot. It's only what people want to show you. It's a snapshot of what people want to show you. My wife's Instagram is full of her looking absolutely beautiful, stunning, all the time. You ask my wife, I've got a collection of pictures on my phone where I catch my wife off guard. And now and again, I remind her and I humble her and be like, remember, this is actually what you look like. You don't always look like this beautiful person to the world. So it's important to remember that what you see, what other people show you about their lives is not true. That is not what they look like all the time. Like you see me doing comedy on stage or whatever. I look like I'm having fun all the time, but quite often, I do have bad moods. I do lose my temper. I do get annoyed. Or you should see me driving. I am quite impatient in a lot of situations and stuff. And so it's important to remember that everyone has ups and downs. And there's a quote from the Quran, which is, it shall pass. So the good times, what that means is the good times don't last forever and the bad times don't last forever. Most of us live our lives here, and occasionally we have these and we have these. And we got to remember that most of it is this. And this is honestly brilliant. When we live like this, we think, oh my God, life is boring. I should be doing more exciting things. But this wouldn't be that good if you live like this all the time. Then this would become this. And this isn't like this all the time either, because most of the time you're like this. So you've got to remember that those times that you feel bored or you feel like your life is not that exciting, actually, that is how 99% of the people live 99% of their lives. And so try and remember that. And also, like, be yourself, because no one else can be you, and you are only one, but you are the only you that's ever existed. And so you deserve to be yourself and to show people that what you're capable of.
It also extends just beyond young people as well. Like, since I read your book, I started journaling a bit more, because I think there's real value in remembering stuff as they happen, jotting that stuff down, because, I lost my mum 8 years ago, and there's so many stories. Huh?
I'm kidding.
Yeah, so you never knew about it. By the way, I lost my mum 8 years ago.
I said, where's she gone?
So he knows. Anyway, they're so awkward right now. But, people's memories and, life passes so quickly. Doesn't matter what age you're at, even now, there's nothing stopping you from just jotting down some of the stuff you wanted to remember, some of the stuff that's happening now. Not necessarily because you wanted to get published, but it's just nice for you to be able to. Yeah, and so there were so many bits in the book which felt nostalgic to me as someone who grew up in London, well away from Blackburn. And I thought, there's a bit. Did you find that as well as you were reading the book? Were there things for you where you thought, oh, I remember this, or this feels close to me as a young teenage boy?
More sort of places as well as experiences.
Yeah.
But then relating to them from, or trying to understand them from that perspective, yeah.
And that's the power, isn't it? Young Muslim guy writing a book in a white, I presume you identify as white. Yeah. White gentleman finds something where he's like, oh, I can relate to that. And that's why books like this are so important. I don't think we've got time for any more questions, so we'll do a quick wrap up. What's next, Tez? We both did, yes. What?
You're on tour next year?
I'm on tour next year.
Yeah.
From February next year, I'm on tour across the UK. Leicester Square Theatre on the 29th of April. There's not very many tickets left. 150. Please do buy them. If you get home in time tonight for Celebrity Mastermind, I'm on tonight, 5:30. My specialist topic was Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, who is a Pakistani singer. So if you're going to watch that 5:30, do so. But other than that, Tez, on behalf of everybody here, thank you so much for writing the book. Round of applause for Tez Ilyas, everybody.
Eshaan Akbar for being a brilliant host.